Good afternoon, everyone. And again, thank you very much for joining us in our series of Google Learning Bundle applications. I thank you very much for taking the time to join us today. We're going to do our best to make it entertaining, interactive, and as informative as possible. You do have the ability to ask questions using the Q&A function with the Zoom webinar, so please feel free to ask questions. We're going to do our best to answer those throughout the presentation while you have us live on the air here. And if we don't have an answer for those skill testing questions, we will get back to you within 24 hours via email. So I'm just going to start by doing a quick introduction. My name is Glenn Collins, and I'm an executive here at CDI Computers, and have the great job of being able to work with folks like Tracy and Victor to bring solutions to educators like yourselves that allow us to change the way we're engaging students and hopefully get as much out of the technology as we can going forward. So that's really our goal today. I'm going to ask Tracy and Victor to introduce themselves when they are jumping in to host their pieces of today's solution. I'm just going to do a quick introduction in terms of the media literacy apps. Unfortunately, this slide is incorrect, but the goal is to really introduce the kind of the concept of what media literacy apps covers, what the learning outcomes are hoping to be, just from a very broad level. There's a couple things I'll say up front. One is we will provide you with some fundamental pricing, some kind of high-level pricing, so you have an idea before we begin. And today's session is recorded, and anybody that has registered or is attending will get a link tomorrow to a copy of the recording. So hopefully, if you want to share this with peers or other folks in your organization, you'll be able to do so. And as I said earlier, feel free to ask questions throughout the session. Once I've done my quick overview, which literally will only be a couple of minutes, we're going to ask Tracy to jump in and talk a little bit about Frontier and that product, and then Victor to jump in and talk about his portion of the solution. I think you'll all find this really interesting and remarkable. I'm astounded now with what we are able to do in the Chrome ecosystem in terms of applications that are available online. Things that only a few years ago you could do only in an Apple environment or only in a Windows environment are now starting to come together in an online fashion, which Google has done a great job working with folks like Frontier and Scribe to pull these together. And everything that we show you today, we also have professional development to back it up. So not only can you buy these applications, but if you're looking for some education on it, we can help you with that as well. So without any further ado, and at the end, I'll just kind of do a quick wrap up of what, if there's some interest, if you want, some follow-up, some information on the products, etc., then we'll be happy to provide you kind of what to do in that case. So really, what is the media literacy bundle all about? It really is an opportunity to help students or help instructors bring current events into a classroom and to engage students with worldwide events and what's happening in the news. And I guess the part that I took away when I started looking at this was the ability to really have that literacy skills that allow you to differentiate real news from fake news. And all we hear about on the news is about fake news for the last probably year now. That's been a term that's been thrown around quite a bit. And it's evidently by a variety of facts. There's all kinds of information out there. So how do we help the students curate that information into a format that is truthful, usable, quotable, referenceable, etc.? You're going to see in the next little while. The whole concept of the Google Learning bundles was really they did some studies and talked to universities about graduates and talked to employers about graduates and said, what kind of skills do we have to give students today to be ready for 21st century jobs? And we've all heard, we're really teaching kids, we're trying to give kids the skills for jobs that don't exist yet, with technology that doesn't exist yet, etc. And really the whole concept here is to kind of leap forward and help them with things like collaboration, communication, the ability to build some confidence in what they're doing is is effective and efficient. And I guess really the way I see all of these tools is to be able to engage the students in a much more effective way and get them involved and excited about interactive learning. So just a quick overview of the bundle. As I said, it comes with the products you see on your screen, and you're going to see all kinds of information about them shortly. And for $49 or less, the subscription is 25 years. The subscription, as most cases are, is based on the number of students and the number of years you subscribe for. So there's discounts associated with larger numbers of students and longer than 1 year periods. So at the end, I just threw that out there so you have an idea of what it costs for the very basic package. At the end of today, if there is some desire to get more detailed pricing based on your individual needs, we'll be happy to do so. So without any further ado, I am now going to turn it over to Tracy.
So my name is Tracy Reynolds, and I'm part of the eSpark team. I'm our regional vice president. I'm a former teacher. I taught for several years in Baltimore, and excited to tell you all about Frontier today, powered by eSpark. So first, I'll start with telling you a little bit more about the digital literacy media bundle, and then go into Frontier and why it matters and how it fits into your classrooms and districts. So really what we're trying to do here at eSpark with Frontier is overarch with digital citizenship, but also build critical thinking skills. We all know that in schools, this is extremely important for students to get to those deeper levels of thinking, to be able to synthesize their text, to be able to get on that deeper level of thinking. And we find it really important for the teacher to be critically involved in that. In ed tech in the past, a few things that we've seen is that the education technology has really moved into a way where students are learning just from the computer and not as much interaction with the teacher. And we fundamentally disagree with that at eSpark and really want to make sure that the teacher is at the core of the instruction and that they can use the technology that's available to them to support their core instruction and really leverage the teacher. So we want to move from just access to this information to being able to analyze, evaluate, and then eventually be able to create specific products to show their mastery and to show those deeper levels of critical thinking. So I'll talk to you a little bit about Frontier, how it does this through its lessons and projects about real-world topics that promote media literacy and digital citizenship. So teachers are able to go through a bank of lessons and select lessons that are aligned to their state ELA standards and their reading and writing standards. Teachers can customize the level of their students. We all know that for every really great lesson, you need to differentiate for the needs of your students. So differentiating on ability level is just one touch away. They're going to be working through these higher level texts and develop their critical thinking skills through writing responses, which I'll show you. And then students are staying engaged because they're using real world media, multimedia resources such as articles, videos, podcasts that our team of former teachers has curated from the web for each lesson. So where does Frontier fit? It supports the students in grades 3 through 5 and 6 through 8. And as I mentioned before, it covers 100% of 2 domains within ELA, writing and reading informational text. And it all is obviously aligned very nicely with Google, so students can just log in automatically with their Google login. So as I walk through Frontier, a few things that you'll see is that it gives students the ability to practice authentic web research. So really see what good research looks like, what good content looks like out there on the web. Teachers are able to differentiate, and they're also able to customize the content for their students. So if there's articles or videos that the teacher wants to add on, Frontier is completely customizable for the teacher. And then district leaders are able to see the achievement gains that are tied directly with the Chromebooks and Google Classroom in the classroom. So when you log on to Frontier, this is what you'll see. So students and teachers just log in with that one click. This is showing you a little bit about the Frontier teacher experience. So on the left, you have all of the various topics that teachers can search. They can search by grade level, they can search by reading or writing standard or topic, and find whichever lesson they want to facilitate with their students that day. On the right, you can see as they click in, you can see here's an article that the students would be reading. On the right side of that, there's a student prompt. The teacher can edit that student prompt to tie it more into what you're working on in classrooms or tie it more to specific standards. And then they can also remove that article or add a new one. So it's completely customizable. What it looks like for students is that when they get a lesson from their teacher, it's all sent to students within one click of the teacher. And the students are able to see on the left all of these different resources that were curated for them on this topic at their level. So they can go through each of these at their own pace, or the teacher can pace it out for them. They're able to click if they like the article, and then they're going to be taking notes through each one so that they can synthesize all of their research into a final project. Which is on the right, which ties in with Google Docs and Google Slides, so they can create their topics there. So you can see on the left, all those little yellow sticky notes are all the students' research that's come together that they'll use in order to create their final project. And there's scaffolding and writing prompts available. Teachers can upload various rubrics or edit as well. So here's an example if a student logs on and they want to do something more focused on student choice. So there's various topics that students could pick from that they're interested in learning about. We really want to cultivate a love for learning and a love for writing. And the best way to do that is to empower students to choose what they're interested in learning about and dive deeper into that topic. So here's an example. They could choose, should every school teach kids how to code, or how does social media impact your life? And as they go through this, they click in so they chose how does social media impact your life. Show them they have 16 unfinished activities. They can work through these in any order, and you'll see it's a variety of multimedia resources. As they go through, there's tech support for them. This all interacts with any Google plugins that you want to add on. And in the top right, you'll see that little blue button that says write about it. And that's where a prompt will come down from the teacher. We have exemplary ones already in there, but like I mentioned, the teacher can edit that prompt, and then the student's going to take notes on that sticky note. So then it moves through so that they're able to rate, and then it'll show students their progress every time they log in. Once they get to the end of finishing all of those projects, they're able to actually create their final project in Google Docs or Google Slides. So here the question is, what is the next popular form of social media other than Snapchat? So think of something new, get their creative juices flowing to think about something that they're really curious about, to show how they've researched and come up with new ideas. We really want to develop creators. You can see here how a teacher maybe uploaded a rubric that they were using in their class. The students' notes are on the left. There's also a checklist to check your draft. So this is editable as well, so they can look at the organization, conventions, word choice, and voice. And then they'll share to get feedback from other peers within their specific classroom. This feedback is anonymous, and it has anti-bullying software built in. So if there's anything that's inappropriate, it will not get sent to a peer. Here's what the peer feedback looks like. And it gives them writing prompts to give positive peer feedback. And then when they're ready to publish, it goes directly to their teacher. And we really like to celebrate student success. So you see the confetti coming down, so it makes it a little bit more fun for the students when it's time to publish their final project. Here's a few final projects from some of our 5th through 7th grade students on their forms of social media. So you can see if you did it in slides, some do it in the Google Docs. They get really creative with their ideas. So then another flip side of Frontier is that teachers can also control it. So if teachers want to pick a specific topic that they want to send out to all of their students, they can do that as well. And then they can differentiate on grade level. So on the back end, you would have your student list of students who are in your class, And then you just assign them if they're on, above, or below grade level. And for everything you do in Frontier, when you send something out, it will give them that content on grade level, below grade level, or above grade level. Here's where you can see students or teachers can actually add resources. So this one's on what makes people want to fly. So if a teacher has a resource, they're able to add that right there by clicking that button. You can see on the right where they send to students. And then you can choose who sees a specific activity as well, if it's students above, on, or below grade level. Here's a quote from one of our teachers in New York that's using Frontier, a fifth grade teacher. I'll give you just a minute to read that. So lastly, I just want to wrap up a few things to recap about what Frontier does for teachers and students. It's really important for us that it's really driving student achievement, and then also the teacher playing an integral part in that. So it's part of the digital literacy media bundle, ELA focused for writing and response to informational text. It's really engaging because it's all real world nonfiction content. Seamless integration and really easy to set up, especially with the help of our friends at Google. And we really see students as creators. So in each Frontier, they will actually create something so that they can put more things out into the world. So they're not only consumers of education or information. And that's all I have. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great, Tracy. We, at the moment, I haven't got any. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to utilize our question and answer box to send it to us, and we'll go ahead and answer it. It was great, Tracy. I apologize for the technical glitch in the beginning.
Oh, no problem.
I think the point you made at the end, though, is quite interesting, because at the beginning of Chromebook deployments, they were all pitched, especially by some of the competitor products, as something for consuming information as opposed to creating information. And I look at the creative bundle, I look at this bundle, and I think about all the ability now to create content and to utilize the content effectively. So it's kind of really cool, the growth that we have made in those areas. Okay, so I am now going to make Victor the host.
Good. Well, thanks for this opportunity, and thanks everybody for taking an interest in our work at Scrible. We're very proud and happy to be part of the new media literacy bundle. I want to thank Glenn for this opportunity to talk to you. What I wanted to talk about just before I get into what we do in detail is we have some obviously kind of overlapping themes with eSpark, in the sense that you're going to hear me talk about research quite a bit. You're going to hear me talk about authentic sources of information on the web and things like that. But what I do want to point out also is that we came from originally a research and writing kind of a place. So that's where we started. And you're going to see in what I'm going to show you, obviously a media literacy example of how you can use us. You can obviously use us beyond that as well, in the sense that you can use us for kind of classic research projects and papers. And I think some of that will become obvious when you look at this, but feel free to ask me any questions about it along the way as well. So the problem that we have set out to solve originally was sort of addressing a massive research and writing skills crisis. And kind of in the current political climate and news climate, that's sort of been feeding and kind of had led to sort of a serious media literacy crisis as well. And some of these trends have obviously been recognized in a variety of ways. It's been pretty well documented that unfortunately a lot of our students that are in secondary grades are kind of poor at doing online research. Many of our high school graduates are not ready for college level writing. And then of course what's now become really interesting is that there is a lot of media literacy and digital literacy language has been sort of mentioned in a variety of state standards across the country. So let's see here. I saw a message here saying can't hear, but can you all hear me okay? Maybe that's an old message. I'm just stopping for a minute to have somebody can send me a quick message on the chat. Okay, great. Thank you very much. The worst thing is when you're doing a webinar and you talk and you don't realize that you're not being heard. So I just wanted to check there. Thanks a lot. So, what we've identified is obviously that there is a problem in the realm of research and writing, and obviously that now plays into the media literacy world. And you'll hear some common themes to how Tracy talked about eSpark, but you'll hear some differences as well. When we came into the realm of research and writing, what we recognized after talking to hundreds of educators like yourselves across the country is that at the end of the day, research and evidence-based writing is a pretty complex project. It requires lots of different tasks, like the things that you see here on the left-hand side. And each one of those tasks has a unique set of skills associated with it. And I think what's always been a challenge is, the kinds of information that you need to use and the quality of the information you might want to use in something like a research paper. It's something that's been always important. And I think with the advent of the web, it became overwhelming because of the quantity of information that students have had to deal with. And then more recently, this problem has gotten even more complicated and overwhelming because of the fake news crisis, which has obviously been sort of in the news for the last year, as Glenn mentioned at the beginning of the call. And so, what we've tried to do is basically build a set of tools that on the one hand provide students with kind of real world research and writing tools that are the types of things that they need to actually get work done, the kinds of things that they're going to end up having to do when they frankly progress onto college and in the workplace. And on the flip side, what we've built is a set of assessment and analytics capabilities for educators so that they can kind of have real-time access to the student work as it's being done, which is something that historically has just been very difficult when students do a research paper and teachers can't necessarily access all that information that leads up to the final paper that gets handed in. And on the other hand, we also have analytics, which gives teachers sort of a holistic view into where students are in the process. And what this really amounts to is basically the first really fully integrated end-to-end research and writing solution. And I think this is a really important thing because lacking something like what we've built, historically, if you think about the workflow that students and teachers have had to use and frankly suffer through, many times they've kind of strung together 3 or 4 different types of apps or online and offline processes to try to get this work done. So you can imagine that a student might be bookmarking interesting articles that they're going to be using for their research project in the browser, and then maybe using a standalone PDF annotation tool, and then maybe using a separate, standalone citation service. And of course, this has a variety of problems, if inefficiency in the workflow for the student, having to kind of copy and paste information from one system into another and so forth. And on the teacher side, that has the really unfortunate impact of essentially trapping the student work in different data silos. So it becomes really difficult and time consuming for a teacher to be able to track student work over a multi-day, multi-week, or in some cases a multi-month research project or paper type of an assignment. And by bringing everything together under one roof, we're able to go out and provide teachers with a more holistic view through a teacher dashboard that I'll give you a quick glimpse of in just a few minutes. So I'm going to kind of show you a very quick set of screenshots that gives you a quick overview, and then I'm going to switch over to Chrome and kind of show you a couple of interfaces in the actual application itself. So the overview here that I want to kind of emphasize is that we are a research platform that allows students to be able to curate, annotate, and collaborate on authentic online sources. So things like news articles and blog posts, which are really what the kind of current media literacy crisis is sort of focused on. And this is really important because I think that trying to teach media literacy in the abstract using sort of pre-canned content sometimes can be difficult. And I think that one of the things that we're really proud of is that we're able to allow you to access and use, real news that's just broken, for example, last hour, basically pulling any piece of information on the web into Scrible and working with that. And what students can do with that is when they come across an article that might be interesting, and this is obviously not a news article, it's a Wikipedia article, but we like to demo on it just so you can kind of see how the tools work on a clean white background with a lot of text. What you can see here is that students are able to basically use our Chrome extension to be able to call up our toolbar on top of any article on the web. And with that, they can richly annotate the article with different colors and styles right in the browser, and all their work is saved in real time. And of course, that's extremely helpful because it obviates the need to do things that, frankly, we've all had to suffer through over the last 15 or 20 years, where you end up sort of maybe converting that web page to a PDF or copying and pasting bits and pieces into a Word document or something like that. Here, all the information can be annotated, accessed right there in the browser. And one of the important things that Glenn mentioned at the beginning was, not just being able to do work like this, but also being able to cite it properly. And so what we've baked in is something that you've probably seen as a standalone app in other places. We basically built in a kind of a built-in citation capture capability, where the student can basically just click on a button on our toolbar and they'll see the information we've automatically extracted and pre-filled to have a properly formatted citation. And that, of course, is really helpful when they get downstream into the writing process, which is what I'm going to show you in just a moment. All that information that the students are researching, annotating, and reading closely is getting saved to the Scrible library, which looks roughly like this. Basically, the library is a place where online articles, PDFs, bookmarks are all kind of saved. And all the information is full text index, so it becomes full text searchable. So you can use the power of full text search, filters, and tags. And tags are basically just like, in Gmail, we would call them labels. But you can use that to quickly search through your entire library of content that you yourself have curated while you're working on the web to find and annotate your sources of information. And then downstream, when you're in the writing process, students can bring that research content from their library directly into the writing process for writing in Google Docs. We have a Google Docs integration that's called the Google Docs. It's a Google Docs add-on called Scribble Writer. And in this example, if we're writing a paper about, let's say, Susan B. Anthony, let's say I did my research a week or two ago. Today I'm sitting down to write my paper, and I might do a search for the word Susan to search my library. And the set of search results I get back right in this sidebar are all the notes and highlights that I made where the word Susan appeared someplace inside of them. And this is really powerful. It's basically like we've taken the concept of those sort of note cards that everybody has gotten used to over many, many years. And we've essentially sort of digitized them, put them in the cloud, made them full text searchable, and then made them accessible right here alongside the paper that you're writing through this Google Docs integration. And so it's like having your note cards handy. And if you were to actually click on the article title that you see at the bottom of each one of these search results, it would actually take you directly to that article and would scroll you specifically to where that piece of evidence is in that article. And then if you actually clicked on this sort of add to paper option, you would take that piece of evidence and insert it directly into the paper and insert an in-text parenthetical citation at the end. So I know we're a little bit in the weeds here, and let me take a step back and say that I think if you look at kind of the tools that we've built for students, we basically streamline the whole workflow from the beginning when they're sort of curating and annotating their sources on the web, to the middle when they're actually reviewing them and organizing them in their library, to the end when they're actually writing, let's say, an analytical piece in Google Docs. We help them with putting the finishing touches on the bibliography. And the reason we do this is that we feel like we live in a time now where software can really help automate the mundane tasks that I think a lot of us have had to sort of suffer through for many years. And if we can do that, our hope is that we basically can free up students' time so they can spend more of that manual information processing time on the more important critical thinking parts of the process, like thinking about the quality of the sources that they're using or the validity of the evidence that they're citing, the structure of the paper that they're writing, those kinds of things. And so that's a really important shift in how students can spend their time. And that's a pretty important part of what we've done. So let me just kind of close this sort of pseudo demo with screenshots by talking just for a moment about what we are able to do for educators that's pretty novel. And that is that teachers can really assess the student work in real time by a novel data dashboard. And this is pretty powerful because historically, if you think about a teacher that's assigned something like a research paper, if Billy hands in a bad paper at the end of the assignment, teacher doesn't necessarily always know what went wrong. It could be that Billy had a hard time finding good sources. It could be that he waited to the last minute to write the paper. And the issue is that a lot of this work, as I mentioned before, has historically been done sort of offline, at home, and over a long period of time. So it's not like the work is being done right in front of you the whole time. And what we've done is basically said, look, we've brought a lot of this stuff into the modern era by giving students tools to essentially do this work online, centralize that information in their library, and then essentially make it accessible to their teacher in real time. And as a byproduct of the students using the tools to do that work, not only can the teachers actually access that information that the students are working on in real time for formative feedback, but we're able to sort of aggregate that and basically be able to show teachers at a classroom level and at an individual student level where everybody stands. And so we're able to surface really important metrics that either historically have been kind of lost to the ether because nobody collected them or the work was being done offline. Or if you did try to collect it and it was available digitally, it was just a lot of work, frankly, from a teacher's perspective, to try to collect that and track it at every step of the process. So we're able to show you, for example, when you're working on something like a research paper, how many students have started the research or started the paper, started, having, meeting the goal of having 8 citations, or in this case, that's the goal that the teacher set for the paper and so forth. And we're able to do that at both the classroom level and the individual student level. And so it really gives teachers visibility into what we've been told has oftentimes in the past been a black box. And what we're trying to do is really empower teachers with real-time data so that they can make better decisions about how to spend their time and who to spend their time with. If it's a week before the paper is due and you can see that Billy's one of these 5 kids that hasn't even started the research yet, now you've got some actionable information that you can use to have a conversation at the end of class about what's going on. The last thing I'll say here is that a lot of what we've done here thus far has been around progress tracking, but we wanted to make the point that especially as we get further into media literacy, that we're going to be sort of surfacing other very interesting information that could be helpful from other angles and in other ways. So this last column that you see here is sort of meant to exemplify that. What we're able to do here is show you that of the 6 sources, for example, that Jordan has collected, that they come from different places. So if this was the live demo, I could hover over this and you'd see that this would tell you that 2 of these sources that she's collected are coming from government websites, 2 are coming from academic websites, 1's from Wikipedia, and so forth. And so we're able to automatically categorize the sources that students are looking at and using into a couple of major buckets, and that's going to be getting more sophisticated over time. And so I guess teachers and librarians that care about things like the credibility and the diversity of sources that students are using are able to, at a glance, quickly see what kinds of authentic sources they're using from the web. And we're planning on doing some really interesting things going forward that would potentially provide even more insight into the credibility and the diversity of sources that they're using. So that's kind of like the high level. What I thought I would do is not try to repeat myself too much on anything that I've shown you, but just really quickly jump into Chrome and show you a couple of interfaces that show you what it would be like from the teacher's perspective, since I spent a lot of time showing you from the student's perspective what the work would be like, and sort of show what it's like to actually set up an assignment and how that would look when the student looks at it in a media literacy type of an example. Okay, so when you come into your account, this is an example of Teresa Smith, a teacher. Typically she would have her own library for all the sources that she may have collected for anything that she's working on, but every student and teacher has a classroom tab. And within that classroom tab, we give you the ability to essentially either create classes, or if you're using Google Classroom, you can sync with Google Classroom and bring your classes directly in to Scribble from there. And you can actually do something that's pretty interesting here, and that is that you can sort of create assignments, research paper and project assignments from within Scribble. So let's say we were to create an assignment. We give you the ability to sort of choose if you want to create a research project or paper assignment. So let's say hypothetically we were going to create a research paper assignment. You would go through and sort of choose what class it's for, have some typical fields here about what it's related to. You can set certain goals about the number of cited sources and the word count. And then you can even recommend sources that you want the students to use. Okay. So instead of creating a new one, I'm just going to jump to an example that I created specifically for this call, so you can see a media literacy type of an example. So here's an example of an assignment that I, the teacher, created on media coverage of the healthcare debate, which obviously is in the news right now. And when I created the assignment, I said, I want the students to be able to write a short paper comparing the coverage of Senator John McCain's vote on the Graham-Cassidy bill by media outlets of different political leanings, using the 2 articles that are recommended by me, the teacher, below, and another article of the student's choice. And there's certain goals that I set. The paper has to be 2 pages and some other details around what it ought to look like. And then I recommended 2 articles from kind of stereotypically left and right leaning media outlets, Fox News and Huffington Post. And then I set certain goals. You need to have 3 sources overall because I asked you to pick a 3rd article of your own choosing and have it be 600 words. Okay, so that's how a teacher would, for example, create something like a media literacy type of an assignment that's involving some level of close reading, authentic sources from the web, and writing. And then if I'm the student, when I come into my view, looks very similar. I would look at my classes, I would look at my assignments, and I would see that, I have this assignment around media coverage of the healthcare debate. I go in there and I see what my teacher has asked me to do. And then I can actually, go to a dashboard where I can actually look at essentially information related to this particular project that I'm working on. So let's go to that project dashboard. And what we see here is that we have the 2 articles that, I had pulled up because the teacher asked me to, and using the annotation tools, I've annotated them. I'll actually just take you to one of those articles now so you can kind of see how that's been annotated by the student in this example. So here's an example. I, as a student, have gone through and highlighted certain things with certain colors. And we have a feature called a legend, which allows me to make sense of how I'm marking up the article. And I can basically toggle that on or off by clicking on this button. So when I'm annotating an article, I can say, everything that I've highlighted blue, maybe it's related to persuasive language that this author is using to try to make their point. Maybe I highlight things in green that are sort of sarcastic. Maybe I highlight something, I think this is orange, a little hard to see here, but or pink, that maybe pulls in a third-party view. And in this article, I haven't highlighted anything orange, but in the other article that my teacher had saved and asked me to read closely, I've done that as well. And so when I go back to my dashboard, you'll see here that here are the two articles, and I haven't yet saved the third one that the teacher asked me to do. There's also a bibliography that sort of gets generated by default, and there's nothing in it yet, but I can basically add the sources that teachers asked me to add, and I can kind of create my bibliography for the paper that I'm eventually going to be writing. And if I go back to my project dashboard, you'll see the legend that I had sort of set. So the legend allows me to sort of say, here's my markup strategy for how I'm going to be closely reading each one of these articles. We saw that just a minute ago. And then the deliverable. So my submission of what I'm going to be handing in at the end of the assignment is this Google Doc. So if I go there, you can sort of see that maybe I've started writing this Google Doc, writing the paper in this Google Doc. And if I call up my Scribble Writer add-on, I can potentially bring in some of the highlights that I've made to kind of make my point. So as this pulls up here, you'll see here the two articles that we have. And if I click on one of these to kind of look at my annotations, here are the annotations that I've made in that article. And as I showed you before, if I were to click on something here, it'll basically insert that highlighted evidence from that article directly into the paper and insert an in-text parenthetical citation at the end, just like I showed you during the screenshot part of the demo. So you'll see some overlap with what I showed you before, but I wanted to try to use more of a media literacy type of an example to kind of make the point. Obviously, you can use our stuff broadly for research papers and projects, but here's an example of how a teacher might, assign a research and writing assignment or exercise that involves current news using authentic sources like a Fox News article, a Huffington Post article, et cetera. And then the student can basically use the tools that we've developed to, closely mark up those articles. And here's the other one that I wanted to show you, as well as then take that close reading of those annotations and bring them into the Google Doc where they're writing their paper. Okay. So hopefully that makes sense. I know I've jumped around quite a bit, but I wanted to make sure that you got to see all of that. And, we're giving you kind of a very quick version of what this all looks like. Obviously, we've got more bells and whistles, and we'd be happy to give you a deeper demo. And, if you're interested more in the traditional research papers and that sort of thing, there's certainly more details we can talk about there. I haven't shown you any of the stuff that we do with sort of PDF annotations, but we're happy to talk about that as well. And then basically, just to kind of close out, I wanted to say that, what we've seen by having folks use Scribble is that it's pretty broadly useful, because in this day and age, every student has to learn to research and write. Those skills, along with media literacy, are really important modern day skills. Obviously, you can use Scribble across grades and subjects. We tend to see the most sort of immediate traction in the middle school and high school arena. For the reasons that are probably obvious from the analytics that I showed earlier. We're really trying to provide a personalized learning approach to research and writing. Scribble is really good for project-based learning and writing across the curriculum. And of course, this kind of work, this kind of workflow, these kinds of skills that students develop when they're doing this kind of work is the dominant form of kind of research and writing they're going to end up doing when they go, onto college, and even in the workplace, where people are putting together their own presentations, their own white papers, their own grant proposals. If they're writing for a publication, they're going to need to sort of do this kind of critical thinking around the content, and then use the set of workflows to kind of produce whatever that final deliverable is. So at the end of the day, what we've tried to build is something that is real world, in the sense that it's a set of tools that works with authentic online content and gives students a variety of tools in one place that allows them to do that work, and then gives teachers essentially real world visibility into that workflow in real time. As you can see, we're a Google for Education partner. We have lots of integrations with the Google ecosystem. I think you've sort of seen all of it in what I've shown you here, but happy to talk about that in more detail if there's any interest. We're really proud and happy to be, in the Media Literacy App Bundle with eSpark. And then I think I'll just stop there, except that I had a slide here. I wanted to say that if you'd like to learn more, obviously, you can get in contact with Glenn and folks there. We'd also love to just hear from you directly if you have anything more you'd like to set up. We have the interest form at this URL, just scribble.com/learn-more. If you can just drop us a quick message and let us know that you're on the webinar and you'd like to come and set up a follow-up, we'd love to talk to you in more detail about some of this stuff. All right, thank you so much. I'll just stop there and see if there's any questions and pass it back to Glenn.
I'm muted. There you go. Now I'm back. We're having a little issue with the audio today. So I'm hoping everybody can hear me okay, and I would appreciate very much everybody being here today. Hopefully you saw the kind of powerful things you could do with Chrome and Chrome environment with the tools that you saw a moment ago. Just to kind of give you a follow-up, I know somewhere here I got to figure out how to share my screen again because I think you're staring at a black screen. Where are we? All right. Anyways, I won't waste any more time. If you need assistance going forward, my email address is gcollins@edugear. That's edugear.com. We gave you some pricing, but we can give you pricing for whatever configuration you want, whether you want to buy these one at a time or whether you want to buy them in multiples or as a bundle, or depending on the number of students you have and depending on the number of years you're interested in, we can provide you with price quotes for all of those. There is active demo accounts that we can set you up with on either of those applications so that you can try before you buy. And I encourage you to reach out to us if you have any further information. As I said earlier, there will be a recording of this sent to you. We'll try to edit out the gaps where we had audio issues, and before we do that, so it should be about 24 hours, so you'll get a link to today's session. So without any further ado, I didn't have very many questions. If we have any that come up afterwards, we'll send out the answer to all those that attended. So on behalf of CDI and Victor and Tracy, I thank you very much for your input. I thank you for your time today. I hope you got out of this what you were hoping for. So cheers, and we'll talk soon. Bye.